gratitude develops happiness. And if you can have that joy, you're going to have a wonderful place where people will love to work and do their absolute best. I wouldn't call myself a pioneer. I think what I do is I reach out to people that I feel like could collaborate and work together as a team with their strengths. And at the same time, I look for people that have those feelings toward each other that are strong and respectful. So respect is a huge thing amongst our teams. I had some wonderful people on the Blue Angel teams that I had, and that was crucial because we had to work on developing trust. So as a pioneer, you might say, I would just say that I had success in the way I put the teams together. When there were areas that were soft, or you could say weak, in someone's performance, we were so open, and we had dissolved fear in the workplace. Fear just went away because you had personal responsibility, which created the accountability that made others believe in you and that you were transparent. So each of us pursued that, and through the way the team functioned, those teams that I led in the Blue Angels, it was perfectly clear what was going on, and it developed this a level of trust just huge. So trust, you'll hear me say that a bunch, but that was a big thing about how I'm not going to take credit for it, how we created teams that performed. We sought perfection, never got to perfection, no one ever does. But along the way, we found lots of excellence, and that was the deal. That's what we wanted for. So that I gave you a little more than you asked for, I believe, but that's kind of where we were with developing good teams and using the leadership that respected everybody. It's easy to run a business with hierarchy, the top down, the pressure, what happens there though, with that kind of a business model or leadership model, I think it's more leadership than anything else. I don't think it's ever, it's always written who the boss is. Everybody knows who's going to be accountable for the success and failure. And here, let me digress for a second. So when I say accountable for the success, we must, as leaders, always deflect the success to our teammates and the folks that are working with us and yes, for us. So, but when it comes to things that you come up short, that's when you, as a leader, take responsibility and find ways to work to a better solution. Okay, so hierarchy versus a high level of collaboration. What I found in my career was most places that I was working with or in had somewhat of a hierarchical structure and way of doing business. When I got to the Blue Angels, I found this way that, again, dissolved fear. And to dissolve fear, you have to create a safe environment for that, where people aren't feeling like they could lose their job if they're open about how they may have come up short and how they plan to fix that. And that's what was beautiful about this collaboration we had on the Blue Angels. I like to look at the way we developed trust. It was through a number of C words, if you will: character, commitment, competence, and consistency. And I delve into those deeper when I talk about it in a format where people are in the audience listening, or remotely or virtually. So those are the things that create that collaboration, because it all goes back to trust. If you get hierarchical and you just say, "Hey, Bob, why did you do it that way?" No, Bob's going to immediately put on his armor, his protective devices, and say, I've been found out. I better find an excuse. It doesn't get to the right answer because there's fear there. So collaboration is also another way of getting to the best answers and getting to the best performance I have a phrase that I like to use, and that is a purpose larger than self. It's not about you, it's about the company, it's about the association, the team, the surgical team, whatever it might be. The purpose is to accomplish what the goals are of your team. And to get to that and to find out what um, those solutions are, it has to be an environment that's collaborative and cooperative and trusting. It really has to start with culture. If you want to have trust in your organization, the culture has to be developed. Now, I say culture developed, right? Just like you walk in the door as the new boss, the new CEO, the new chief of whatever that area might be, and you say, okay, we're going to have trust here, and this is how we're going to. Well, no, there's the development of a culture. What we like to call it on the Blue Angels, the foundation. I call it the foundation of the culture, gratitude. We had an expression, it was glad to be here, and we said it to each other even when we were debriefing, which is the secret sauce of developing a great company, the way you debrief what you've done so you can elevate your belief levels at the other side of that debrief. And that's a much deeper subject as well. But you have that discussion, and because of a sense of gratitude at the end of each person's uh, discussion of what they had done that day, they come up with the phrase "glad to be here." So you could have the worst day in the world, but you are appreciative of where you are, the team you get to work with, especially, and the openness of it, and that's why you were glad to be here. So back to the culture, creating a good environment. You start out with that foundation of gratitude. Being glad, being happy. Gratitude develops happiness, and if you can have that joy, you're going to have a wonderful place where people will love to work and do their absolute best. Um, Collaboration. Back to how does a leader develop it? It has to do with how the culture exists, and you can come in as a new leader and make those changes. Has to be subtle, has to be real, has to be heartfelt. So I like to just to pry into this a little bit more. When you have that sense of gratitude, to me, that's the concrete foundation that holds the enterprise up. But through that concrete, I'm going to go back to the T word. You have to have what we call, you're probably familiar with rebar, those metal bars that go through to keep the concrete from cracking. And that rebar to me is trust. So all of that goes into building an environment as a leader, building an environment that promotes the best possible outcomes. Top tips for communication is listening, obviously. That's the age-old tenet of communications, is being a good listener. Yeah, and of course that is. You have to be a good listener. And what you need to do is think about what people have said and the impact of that and what it took them to say that now and what the motivations were. So the clear communications, there has to be a vehicle for that, and that's where in my teams that I led with the Blue Angels and in other places, I led a master jet base and naval air station. Had a great team there, recognized as the best installation in the Navy the years I was there because of the team we had. But you have open communications. People feel comfortable in communicating. If you don't have that, if you have anything that stands in the way of that, the boss is going to be mad if I say this, and there has to be that, again, back to the culture. There has to be the culture there that allows people to talk with the boss and with each other and to discuss how that went, which again gets back to this glad to be here debrief, the sense that we had an open ability to express anything we wanted to without worrying about our jobs. Now, there may be cases where a egregious or a flawed way of doing business was there and it just can't be overcome. And if you'll allow me, and maybe in a later question, to talk about the concept of second chances, which I think is so important. But all this, if you build that in, come in with a cultural stance, and that's not a stance, it's developed from the soul of the organization, from the values of each person brings to that organization. That's when you can be wide open with each other, comfortable, honest, sincere, and get not to the answer you want to lay on the company, but get to the right answer.